From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. Cassia, once in a while, we put out an episode from a survivor who is sharing something so heroic, so personal, we walk away feeling forever changed. Today is one such conversation. Modern-day slavery affects more than 40 million people around the world, 70% of whom are estimated to be women and girls. It is truly a great privilege of this show to be able to humanize those overwhelming numbers. Nasreen Sheikh was just a child when she found herself living with 6 other children in a 10 by 10 foot room, working 12 hours a day sewing clothing. One of 250 million child laborers around the world working in and ultimately escaping from this sweatshop is only part of Nasreen's story.
That's right. Nasreen's story starts with being born into a rural village in Nepal, into a family that truly was just struggling to survive. As a young child, she managed to escape extreme poverty, escape child labor, and escaped forced marriage. She pulls back the curtains on these experiences today and shares how she's grown to be an entrepreneur and an activist for those who are still trapped in these circumstances. Nasreen's story is as humbling as it is inspiring. We certainly walked away with our eyes wide open. Take a listen.
Hi, Nasreen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I'm very much looking forward to share my story with all of you.
As are we. We're very interested to hear about it. There's so much that we want to dig into, but I want to just start. You have said, and I quote, "I escaped forced marriage, child labor, and extreme poverty, risking everything to experience freedom. Now I have an education, an impactful voice, and a home in the USA and Nepal." This is really the story. This is the crux of the story that we want to tease apart, and we're really honored to have you here. So let's start kind of at the beginning. You were born in rural Nepal in a village without electricity, without health care, no cars. You don't have any documentation of your birth. You don't even really know exactly how old you are. Please paint a picture for us of the poverty you were born into. What was it like growing up in that community? What did you do as a child?
Yes, I born in very, very small rural village. It is on the border of India and Nepal. And as you were saying, like, I don't know how old I am, and it is because of the village. Our village is undocumented, so the people who born in that village or dies in that village, not necessarily the world knows about them. And it's very male-dominated society. Most of the women and girls are forced to live in a society where they don't have any voice. And if they do try to speak up for themselves, most likely they will be abused and tortured and also lose their life. And it happens when I was very young. I saw that a lot of injustices was happening all around me, and it was very normalized by the society that if for example, if women is being murdered, it's only her fault because she didn't listen to the man or to the society strongly enough to obey, so that's why she was murdered. Or if she was killed, it's her fault. If she escaped, that's her fault. Like, everything came on women, and yet they were like least responsible of those situations. And also they were like heavily silent, and even 1 or 2 women, if they tried to speak up, they were being silent. And when I was very young, I saw that every single girl, every single young girl were being forced into marriage around those villages. And then I also witnessed that some of my aunt being tortured and abused. And one of the really painful thing that I witnessed is one of my aunt being murdered by her husband, and it was completely stayed silent, and her death was never recorded, and police report was never filed, and husband remarried after a few months later.
I just want to make a connection between what you said before and what you're saying now, which is that being in a village that was undocumented with people who are undocumented, these types of murders like the one you witnessed with your aunt could go unreported, no police involved, and he just went on and lived his life with zero repercussions.
Exactly. And not only that zero repercussion, but he remarried another young girl. So it's like it went, it's like he won over and over. And then if she does try to speak up in the future, she will get the same result, like murdered again, and that will be again silent. So yeah, it's exactly like our voice is being so silent, and we don't have any role model to look up to or any support in these villages. We don't have educations. We are like, bombarded by the restrictions and don't have any choice. So sometimes like some women speak up because they are just naturally born with that, with that energy of like speaking and sharing, and then and if they do, then they got into that situation.
How did that lack of documentation impact your own life? What were the hurdles that you had to overcome purely? I mean, there's a lot of them, and we're going to talk about them in detail, but purely as a result of not having documentation. How did that shape your life?
So not having a documentation means like I couldn't go to the school, I couldn't, go and travel anywhere, I couldn't have credit cards or bank accounts, so it's limited me with every single thing that could have given me a freedom to escape that situation. So not having a documentation puts me every time like, oh, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to go to the school, you're not allowed to go to the hospital, you can't even go and file a police report because you need to have your name, or you need to have your birth certificate and things like that. So if you don't have documentation, then even the government systems declined you and don't want to help you because they think that you're just abandoned whatever person, So for me, it was a huge challenge, and that is what pushed me to become a part of this sweatshop as a child labor. And I think I was around 10-year-old when I ended up in a sweatshop, in a small, tiny 10 by 10 room, working 12 to 15 hours a day for textile factory. So most likely, if somebody does not have documents or don't have anything, we end up in those situations where we are like invisible slave for bigger factories or for the people who are in the power.
Connect the dots for us. Where was your family during this time? Was it familial pressure and desperation that needed income that forced you into that situation? What can you tell us about your family?
So my family was happening very generational, and in my father's generation, my father, he worked as a welder in a car industry, and his working condition was so horrible that before I was even born, he lost his brain because he was making $15 a month, and his living condition is so bad, and he couldn't afford nutritious food or clean water, like basic human necessities. So that pressured his brain, and he became disabled with his brain. And so I didn't had a father, even though he was alive, but I didn't have that support as a young child. And my mother was never been to the school. She's just in these villages, in very very rural villages, most of the women's rights are taken away, so they have become like a baby making machine. They're not necessarily a mother, even though from the spiritual aspects they are mother, but they have forgotten the power of being a mother.